If there is one thing to unite this world, it is the hatred of small talk. It doesn't matter if it's a corporate company event or maybe it's just a weekend networking. It can be terrible. It can be downright scary at times. So how do you do it and how do you get better at it? Well, I got you. Today we're talking all about how to never struggle with small talk. Small talk, it's gross. So how are we going to fix that? Let me give you some hints. Number one, instead of just asking, how's work? How's home? Those kind of questions just fall flat. They do nothing for you. They don't move the conversation at all. Instead, we're going to switch it to ask questions that are action-oriented. That means questions about the doing. So instead of, how's work? How's home? How are you? You're going to be asking questions like, what did y'all do this weekend? What do you have coming up? Getting things that they're excited about. What are you excited about today or tomorrow or this week? When you say, what are you doing or going? Those are action-oriented things, and they're going to help push the conversation forward. Number two, now what matters is how you do it. If you notice, I didn't say, do you have anything going on this weekend? Because how are you going to respond to that? You're going to respond to that as either a yes or a no. That's it. When you ask questions typically that are did or did you have fun today? Did you have a good day? When you ask your kid when you pick them up from school, did you have a good day? You're really only giving them a few options to say yes or no. When you ask questions that are closed, that's what they're called, closed-ended questions, they only leave you hardly anywhere to go. It's just a yes or no question. Did you go to the store? Yes or no. Instead, you're going to be opening it up with asking and beginning the phrase or question with what. What, you see how we say, what did y'all do this weekend? Or instead of, did you have fun this weekend? You hear the difference between what did you do for fun this weekend versus did you have fun this weekend? One invites you to open up. The other closes it down and ends the discussion. So anytime that you can, I want you to ask an open-ended question. You do that by beginning with what or how or when, because it gets them to continue to talk. That's what you're after. And also, number three, if you find that you just don't have that much to talk about, or it starts to go downhill and you're finding that each of your responses are getting shorter and shorter, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. People feel like there has to be a certain amount of time for it to count as small talk. No, if you just say hello to the person and you engage maybe in one little back and forth, that's small talk. You've done it. Congratulations. There's no medal. There's no reward. There's nobody counting and timing you to see how long you've been talking. Just if the conversation comes to a natural end, then just say, hey, great to talk to you, and politely end the conversation. Don't feel like you have to keep pushing and pushing to have some green check flag to say, I have accomplished small talk. It's a lot less than you think to make that happen. All right, now on top of making sure your questions are action-oriented, asking about the going, the doing, what they're excited about, what's up ahead, what's going on in the future, on top of making sure that you're asking open-ended questions that are leaving lots of space and begin with what, how, and when, and not did, that's going to close things off. On top of that, there is a formula that I'm going to teach you real quick, and it has always worked for me, and I know it can work for you too. This is how it goes. Number one, you just pick a topic, any topic to talk to this person about. So let's say it's as boring as the weather. You could say, and this weather was crazy. This weather can't make up its mind today. They're going to come up with something. They're going to say, yeah, oh, I know, yeah, right? It's crazy. They're going to acknowledge you in some way. Perfect. You have now set the stage for you to give options. I like to think of it as a poll. And a POLL, meaning you're going to say, for example, in this example, you can say, so are you a fall person or are you a winter person? You like it hot or you like it cold? Or maybe it can be summer or winter. Are you a fan of summer or do you like it cold? Or would you rather be too hot or too cold? You're giving them options. That's the key, options. Because options give us something to talk about rather than just forcing it down one chute and hoping that it works. So if I were to say, do you like the beach in summer or are you more like you like the mountains and the snow? They're going to give you one. They're going to give you one option. They're not going to just leave you hanging. Or they might just say, you know what, I really like spring. Spring's kind of my thing. It reminds me of blah, blah, blah. Well, then you get to interact and say, well, I totally hear you. I happen to be a fall person because it makes me think of football and Thanksgiving. And here in America, we have Thanksgiving in November. And so that's what I really like. And then you get to kind of interact with them and say, well, what about you? And now you're getting to get to know them on just a little bit deeper level, because here's the trick on this formula, is why it works for me, at least, is that when you share something that is more personal about you, 99% of the time, it then opens it up for the other person to share something a little bit more personal about them, because they feel like, oh, well, you've shared something and now I'm going to share something. It's very, it creates kind of this mutual contract that's hidden in a way that if I share a little bit about me and what's personal to me and what I like, you're then going to feel a little bit more comfortable sharing more personal things about you. And that's what you're curating in that experience. You can take it wherever you want to go, but that's the formula. It's that simple. Pick a topic, create options for them. Maybe you create 2 options, at least 2, maybe 3 or 4, and then you share something as to which one is your favorite, and then ask them, what about you? Even the question, what about you, continues to open things up in the dialogue, and it never can really go wrong that way. I mean, they call this small talk, not big talk. It's just something short, compact that you left at, oh, okay, I learned a little bit more about this person. And it's something that you can knock out really in just an elevator ride. It's very quick, very easy. Let's say you're coming off into the elevator straight from some rain or whatever. You can easily just open it up talking about really the weather, the news, whatever you want. Try that. And because this episode is about small talk, I'm going to keep this episode small. So let's go ahead and get into my favorite part of the podcast, and that's where I get to read a question from a follower. Those that are part of my newsletter are able to ask me questions by email, and I'm able to answer them. So if you're not part of the newsletter, you can sign up. The show notes are the link for it is down there in the show notes. All right, this one I have picked one out. This is, let me pull it up. This is Linda, and she lives in Lubbock, Texas. Linda from Lubbock. I think there's a country song in there somewhere. I went to law school in Lubbock, so I'm very familiar with it. Linda says, Jefferson, I need some advice. Thank you so much for your clips. You're very welcome, Linda. I work at I'm not going to say where she works, but I have networking events, and I tend to absolutely clam up, where I stand in the corner and I'm not sure how to approach anyone or to get to a point where I feel comfortable talking to anyone. Do you have any advice? Linda, I'm sorry you're having trouble with that, and that's absolutely okay. Absolutely okay, because what makes you special is what makes you you. So just because you're not going around talking to every single person that is in the room, Linda, does not make you any less special or important or of less value. You find that people can talk a lot and say nothing at all. All right, so a lot of the times these networking events are really just more of a social dance, in a way of just finding who's comfortable with who and who's friends and who's not. So I don't want you to overthink it, but I know that's not all that helpful. So Linda, I'm going to try to say some things that are. So when somebody is talking with you, one thing that you can do, that I like to do, is I will, it becomes subconscious, but if you want to find that you're more engaged with people and get kind of curious with people, physically, one thing that you can work on is I like to slowly, you just kind of cock your head a little bit to the side. That makes it look like you're much more interested in what they have to say, rather than just like, I just want to talk to you. So you don't want to have crazy eyes. You don't want to have it to where you feel like you're in front of their face. You're just kind of at a distance where your shoulders are relaxed. You feel relaxed. It helps me if you're holding something, especially these networking events. Everybody kind of expects you to have something in your hand. It does not have to be a drink. It can be a snack. It could be any kind of refreshment that they have, but it keeps your hands busy. And that's why I'm saying it, because it keeps your hands from having to like fiddle with themselves, or maybe you don't know what to do with them, so you kind of cross them. When you hold something, it keeps your stance open. And what I'm going to encourage you to do on top of that is to just barely slide your head to the side, either side. It doesn't matter, the left or the right, but it gives this posture of wanting to kind of be curious. And when you smile and you're asking questions and they start to respond, if you can just move your head just a little bit to the side, it's going to open them up as if, hey, you're being a little bit more curious about them to have more conversation. Another thing that's going to help, Linda, is understanding that don't go into these events thinking you have to talk to every single person. Like there's a win and a loss kind of thing. There's something to win and lose. That's not it. If you can just go in with the idea of just talking to one person, yeah, it's that basic, just one person, and having a good conversation with them. I would rather trade 20 little small talks that mean nothing at all versus one awesome conversation with somebody that I want to talk to every time. I'll trade that every single time. So when you're going into these types of scenarios, Linda, it's going to help you if you already know who's going to be there, and you make sure that you go talk to that person. If it's a friend, awesome. That's great. The biggest thing is that people just see you around. They see that you're having a good time. But if you're closed off in a corner, even if you're talking to somebody and you just have, you have a closed off posture, your arms are closed, your shoulders are hunched, and you're kind of turned off to the group, they're going to find that a little bit more, it's going to signal at least that you're not wanting to talk to anybody. And maybe you don't, but you ask the question, how can you get better at that? Keep a much more open stance and go in trying to think of just one or two people that you want to make eye contact with and conversation with. It doesn't mean you have to plan out these conversations ahead of time. You certainly can. And what I would encourage you to do is take some of the things that I said at the beginning of this episode of go up to somebody, say hi. I assume it doesn't matter if you know them or not. And you can ask them the question of what was something exciting happen in your week? What's exciting in your life right now? See, it's just one question right there. What's exciting in your life right now? Easy. And you let them talk. And then once they share it, you share something that's going on and exciting in your life. You can't just ask a question and then expect not to have any kind of answer of your own. So it's that kind of that back and forth, that mutual contract that I talked about, Linda, that's going to make sure that you are keeping the ball rolling in the air. And it is much easier for you to end the conversation. This would be point 3 for you. If you feel that the conversation is starting to run low, get out fast. Say, hey, it's been great to talk to you. I'm going to go grab something to eat or drink. Whatever it is, I'm going to run to go see whatever. It doesn't matter. The biggest thing is if you can end the conversation on a high note rather than forcing each other to talk when you really are kind of done talking to each other and then leave the conversation, well, now you kind of drained each other. So if you can, try to leave the conversation on a high note. So if they responded to your what's most exciting in your world today, and they give you an awesome answer, you say, oh, that's fabulous. Ask maybe another question about it. Go, oh, that's fantastic. And if they don't ask anything of you, typically they should. They should. But if they don't, that's cool. We'll just say, wow, that's awesome. Well, I'm super proud of you. That sounds really exciting. It was great to talk with you. And then you leave. And now you've left on a high note. Now, Linda, you've made a good impression because all you do is talk about them. And they're really gonna like that. So, Linda, those are just some quick takeaways. But at the end of the day, you just do what makes you special. All right, you do what makes you you. And if it makes you uncomfortable, don't do it. You stick with what feels good in your lane and what resonates and feels right to you. You don't like them, and you definitely don't want them. But sometimes, no matter what you say, you find yourself getting sucked into them anyway. But with what I'm about to show you today, you're gonna handle them like a pro. Today's episode is all about how to handle unwanted conversations. If you want to avoid an unwanted conversation, number 1, don't fight them, because the more that you do, the more you're going to find yourself in one. Instead, just let it go by. You do that by making yourself sound, disinteresting. This is what I mean. When somebody's pushing an opinion onto you, any controversial topic, whether it's religion, politics, whatever, they're trying to push something onto you, and you say, yeah, I don't know. Simple as that. Yeah, I don't know. Or, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. You're finding ways to communicate to them of, if you're looking for a fight, you're not going to find one here. Number 2, this one is the easiest, but it's the most critical. You are making them feel heard. It's just simply acknowledging their point, and it's very simple to do. This is what it sounds like. I agree that's an issue. Period. Somebody's wanting to get all worked up, and they're telling something to you. all you need to respond is, yeah, I agree that's an issue. I agree that's an issue. You're not saying whether you agree with it or disagree with it. If anything, they just feel acknowledged and heard, and they say to themselves, oh, okay, they understood and heard what I said. And number 3, if you need to be a little bit more direct, you need to tell them that you're not interested in this conversation. If they're not getting the point, here's the way I suggest to do that. You say, I typically avoid this topic. The key word is typically. Yeah, I typically avoid this topic, or I typically try not to talk about X, Y, and Z. The key here is when you say typically, you're communicating if I've had this conversation before, it's not really stimulating to me anymore, so I avoid this topic altogether. You're not saying that they're wrong. You're not giving them a fight. You're not giving them anything for them to bare their teeth on. You're just simply saying, I tend to avoid this. I typically don't do this. And I'm going to give you a disclaimer on this episode, particularly when it comes to political topics. I'm all in favor of educating yourself and making sure that you know about the issues out there. I think you should absolutely exercise your right to vote. No questions asked. That's a different question on whether or not somebody is allowed to force their opinion onto you and say whether they're right or wrong, or if you're supposed to push your opinion back and always have these discussions where it's just beating your head against a wall. If this person is open-minded and it's a discussion that you enjoy having, and people have political discussions all the time and there's no issues, but other people, it's not so much about change. They don't care about the change, they care about the competition. It's like a sport to them. It's like arguing over their favorite sports team. Who's going to win? Who's going to lose? Day to day, the ultimate consequence of the discussion and who wins makes no bearing, no change on their life. It's just something that they feel like a team on. So they want to have this discussion of intellect to intellect or just issue to issue. And they just want to talk it out. All kinds of different reasons why these kind of topics should or may come up in your life. The key is, how do you balance them? The reason why I have number 1 be to pass it by is because it's that idea of don't attend every argument you're invited to. Just because somebody pushes their opinion onto you to talk about any controversial topic does not mean that it's an invitation for you to mandatorily give your opinion right back. Whenever you decide, you know what, I want to push against you. Actually, I don't agree with that. You can disagree all you want. Just know you're walking right into the conversation. It's no longer an unwanted conversation. It is a desired conversation now that you're giving your opinion. If you want to avoid these, then you need to just let them pass by. I say disinterested or be disinteresting because in many ways you're taking all the oxygen out of the room and their fire can't burn. They have nothing to get upset about because you're not giving them anything to jump onto. You're finding ways to say, you know what, I don't know about that. You know what, that's a good question. I'm really not sure. I'm not sure. It's not that you don't have your own opinion. It's not that you're uneducated. It's just you're not in a mood to say, I don't want to get in this conversation right now. And there's nothing wrong with that. When it comes to agreeing with them, understand, nobody can make you agree to something you don't want to agree to. Nobody can force you to say something you don't want to say. But it's critical that these kind of people, when they're pushing these unwanted conversations, just feel heard. Often, if they just feel acknowledged in some way, they're going to go away. Not only have you made yourself disinteresting, they know they're not going to get anywhere with this. They know that you're not going to give them that fight and that excitement that they're looking for. They just want to feel acknowledged. So when you can say things like we mentioned in number 2 of, I agree that's an issue. I hear you. Simple as that. I hear you. I agree that's an issue. I agree. That's all you have to say. Even if you disagree with them, you're just making them feel heard. But if they continue to push and press on you to make you feel uncomfortable in some certain way, don't hesitate for 1 second to say, I prefer, or I typically. You're talking about what you do in the past. I prefer not to talk about X, Y, and Z. I typically try to avoid topics about blah, blah, blah. You can make it even situational. I typically avoid topic X at dinner or at home or at work. You make it situational where you are in your environment. Simple as that. And if they continue to press the button, it's absolutely okay to say, I'm not going there. period. I'm not going there. You're saying, I'm not going into this conversation. I've given you plenty of lead-ups. I've given you signs that I'm not interested in this. That means I have to be explicit with you. I'm not interested in this conversation. I typically don't enjoy talking about topics of X, Y, and Z. This subject matter isn't for me. That subject isn't for me. You find ways to, if they're not going to be taking the signs, be very direct with them to say, I have a boundary here. I'm not going to be goaded into this. I'm not going to be led into this conversation. I'm not going there. Now we're at the part that's one of my favorite parts, and that is I'm going to answer a question from a follower. If you're not already part of my weekly newsletter, I send one email once a week right to your inbox on a communication tip. And those that are on the newsletter can email me questions, and I'm able to answer it here on the podcast. So I have my other phone here, and this one that I picked is from Sammy. Sammy is in Florida. He says, hey, Jefferson, love your tips. I have an issue with work. There is a boss that I have who always likes to talk about whether it's gossip or politics, whatever it is, he's always wanting my input on it, and I'd rather not give it. It's not that I don't have an opinions. I'm just not that much of a social person, and it makes me uncomfortable. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Sammy, I feel you, man. So anytime, let me give you an example of what's this making me think of in my own world is I'd have these conversations with my grandfather. I'd go up every summer to see him, and it never failed. And this happened definitely in the last 5-10 years or so, where I'd start to come talk to him, and every time he'd turn the conversation to politics or some issue that I did not want to talk about. It's not that he and I agreed on some things. We also disagreed on some things, but that's all he ever wanted to talk about. It just kind of consumed his mindset. This is what I'm going to encourage you to do, Sammy. Often the issue that you hear is not the real issue. All right. It's not the political issue that they want to talk about, or that, let's say maybe he's oversharing, or there's gossip, there's something else. It's not that. It's an underlying layer. Continue on with my grandfather example. My grandfather is the type that, he doesn't see a whole lot of people day to day. And so whenever I'm coming around and I'm giving him my full attention, I might be the first person he's really been able to talk to that day, and he wants to get out everything that's on his mind. There's also that element of he kind of wants to, there's people out there who want to feel impressive with their knowledge, regardless of what side of the fence anything is on. It doesn't mean it's political, not political, or religious, or any other controversial topic. They just want to share that they're knowledgeable about a given topic. So I'm going to encourage you to look behind the issue. Why does he continue to come to you with this boss or manager, Sammy? Why does he continue to come to you with this? Is it that he's just looking for other conversation with you? Maybe it's he just wants to have some kind of interaction with somebody, especially if it varies. If it's always the same issue every single time, that's a little bit different. But if he always comes to you with something different, that might be a suggestion that, well, he just wanted to interact with somebody. Like we talked about at the beginning of this episode. Some people, it's not about who's right, who's wrong. It's just the competition. It's like it's a hobby for some people to find out, hey, can we just kind of feel alive for a second if we get up and angry about things, even though nothing in our world's going to change. So when that happens and you feel like you need to set some boundaries in this discussion, number one, I'd encourage you to continue to indicate to him that you're not going to give him any kind of fight. You're not going to be on his side or against his side. You're just going to be disinterested. You're going to be disinteresting by saying things like, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Or, man, if I had an opinion, I'd give one. Simple as that. I don't know enough about it. Or it's, hey, I agree this is an issue. Yeah, I agree. That's definitely an issue. You're simply just acknowledging something that they said. Or if you need to be really, really clear that this is not something you're interested in and you don't like this, it's okay to say, I'd prefer not to discuss this kind of stuff at work. Simple as that. You have to do things that sound authentic and genuine to you. What you can't do is start to engage. If you start to engage or you you begin to just agree and be a yes man to everything and go, yep, you're exactly right, then he's going to continue to come to you with things. But if you continually show that you're not going to be that much fun, you're not going to be his person, or you just find that these aren't the kind of topics that he's going to get with somewhere. If you were able to say, I'd rather talk about you. That was the key of how I kind of had to fix my grandfather in our conversations. I had to tell him anytime he got into this rut, this continuous repeat of a hamster wheel conversation, I'd say, I'd much rather hear about you. That's it. I'd rather hear about how you're doing. Nobody gets mad. Nobody gets upset if you want to move the conversation about them. Nobody's like, oh, no, I don't want to talk about that. Everybody likes to talk about themselves. So when you just genuinely say, I'd rather hear about you. How's everything going? We're good? How's everything? It shifts the mindset. And they're not going to be like, oh, you changed the topic. Everybody likes talking about themselves, especially if it's genuine, this social connection that you're creating. So that's the way I'd handle that, Sammy. Best of luck.
What about the subject of small talk, which I think most people hate small talk. I especially don't like small talk, but many people hate small talk.
Right.
Is there a skill at all to being a real master of small talk in your view?
One would be, don't ask questions that elicit a one-word response. These are what they call closed-ended questions. You want these for cross-examination, because on cross-examination, I just want yes or no questions. Did you go to the store? Yes. No. I want you on when I'm on direct examination, I want to open you up to discussion. I want you to talk more. So what you do is you take advantage of asking questions that open you up. Ask open-ended questions. These are questions that begin with how, or what, or when, or where. Instead of did you go to the store? The same effect would be, did you have a good weekend? I'm only limiting you to a yes or a no.
You talk about these conversational goals.
Yeah.
Having a conversational goal in your small talk. You talk about that on page, I think, 40, 45, and 46 of this book.
Yeah.
So as a conversational goal, I'm a podcaster. I know I'm meeting you today. So I walk in here with a goal in mind that when I start speaking to you, I'm trying to get somewhere.
Right.
Is that what you mean by conversational goal?
Well, there's two separate sides. You want to have a conversational goal really for any conversation that you're going to have. Now, that's different if you're in your hoodie and sweatpants with your friend watching a movie. You don't have to have a conversational goal. I'm saying if you're on one-on-one with somebody at work, it's not a bad idea if you go into their office, you have a goal for where's the conversation going to end, because otherwise it spins anxiety in the other person. Like if somebody texts you and says, we need to talk, period, you're like, I automatically think it's the worst. It's like, oh, something's terrible. We're breaking up. Something's terrible. Something's on fire. It's the worst, because it's that anxiety, that trigger of the unknown. So instead, you always want to have a conversational goal, like the frame we talked about. You're telling them how you want the conversation to end. Same kind of thing with small talk, but when it's much easier when you set a goal that's very low. Like instead of saying, I want them to be so impressed with me, they don't know what to do. What's more impressive is when you're curious about the other person. I want to make sure that I ask at least 3 questions of this person and see what they have to say. That's a great goal. I want to make sure that my goal is understanding where they're coming from just a little bit more. So with small talk, people love to tell them how they got there. People love to talk about themselves. Everybody knows that. One question to ask is how they got to the present moment. For example, how did you learn that? Where did you come across this? Mm-hmm. Yeah, how'd you get in where you are today? And people are like, oh, well, let me kind of talk about myself for a minute. And people love it because they get to tell a story. Very different if I just said, hey, what'd you do this weekend? It was good. We stayed home. There's no story element to that. There's nothing you can do with that. Mm-hmm. But if you get them to talk about a story of what led them to their present moment, much better. Another tip is you get to talk to them about things that are happening in the future rather than looking at the past. The past is really not that great for people because they feel like it's boring. They don't feel like the past is something is that remarkable, but they typically find things that they will look forward to in the conversation. What are you looking forward to doing this weekend? What are you excited about? What's coming up for you? They'll find things that go kind of like, oh, well, I'm kind of excited about this, Y, and Z. But if you ask about what's happened in the past, they kind of have this like, it's in the past. I didn't really do anything.
Now, we all know people that no matter the conversation, they always find a way to talk about themselves. And even if it's not about themselves, it always seems to be their voice that takes up the entire conversation. On today's episode, we're discussing how to handle people who dominate conversations. When it comes to somebody dominating a conversation, and not in the good way, as in they're not letting anybody else speak, they're the ones always having to hear their own voice, there's some things I need you to do. Number one, interrupt them. You interrupt that person. Now, I know it doesn't sound like me to suggest that, but it's true, because if they're not going to respect your time, then you have to do it. And there's a particular way I want you to do that. You interrupt them by using their name. You start low and then you go higher, because people listen to their name. Their name gets their attention. It's the best word they can ever hear is their name. So if I were to hear you or somebody was listening to me and I just said, "Hey, Jefferson, you say it as often and as loud as you need to, because it will eventually make them stop. Number two, when they do stop, I want you to filter and pass it. Here's what I mean. Filter as in you're going to summarize what they just said very quickly and then pass it to somebody else to say, "Hey, I totally hear you. I understand what you're just saying. I'm curious to hear what Bob has to say or what Susie has to say," or you turn it on yourself. My thoughts are, and number three, if they're still dominating the conversation, then you got to put a time limit on it. You have to find a way to get out of there because you're not reaching them. So it's as easy as saying, "Hey, I got about 5 more minutes and then I need to get going. I need to do other things." But time limit is the only way to make sure that they're just going to continue to talk as long as they have an audience. And at the end of it, you just have to understand when somebody is dominating the conversation, it's not a two-way street. It's a one-way street. It's a monologue, and you didn't buy a ticket to hear it. So if they're not going to respect the way conversation should happen, it's time that you respect yourself. And most of the time, these kind of scenarios happen in meetings. Zoom meeting, in-person meeting, it doesn't matter. Where I see it most is in Zoom meetings, because now after COVID with everything, a lot of the legal world has moved to Zoom, where everything is virtual. And I'm sure that's the same way in your world. But what typically happens is that there is, let's say, a dozen people, 10 people, 8 people on the Zoom. And before you know it, it's just one person talking the entire time. It's one person who always has an opinion. It's one person who always has to feel like they're contributing to the conversation way more than their share. And they think truly inside themselves, they just don't have the emotional intelligence to realize that people aren't really, they're kind of getting tired of you talking the entire time. That filter isn't there for them. So they keep talking the entire time. And in meetings especially, you have to make sure that person doesn't do that, because it'll just kill your meeting. It'll ruin it. It will reduce productivity. It will get people aggravated. You know that feeling where all of a sudden they need to comment again and everybody kind of lets out a sigh like, oh, great, this person again. Oh, geez, I wish we could just go. It'll absolutely ruin your meeting and the productivity and where you want to go. So when that kind of thing happens, you have to step out in front of it the first time. If you just let them drone on because you're afraid to offend them, you're afraid to come out in front and feel like that's being too direct, then you just have to be okay with a bad meeting, because it's not going to happen. Also, understand that when people are dominating the conversation, it's often a sense of insecurity. Like most things, we feel that the more we talk, the more intelligent we are. The more people will see how smart we are, how much we're trying to contribute. But often what I find in meetings is the person who speaks the most is typically the one that knows the least. It's the person who's the least out of touch. So they have to overcompensate and feel like everybody around them can have some kind of faith in them, so they talk a whole lot. But often the more you say, it just shows the less that you know. So you're going to be careful about that in your next meeting. But here's the takeaway. When somebody's dominating and trying to control the conversation, you have to step out in front of it quickly, because if you don't, it can go south in a hurry. And I hear some of you already going, "Jefferson, I don't feel comfortable interrupting this person. I don't feel comfortable interrupting them. They're going to get upset if I interrupt them." No, they're not. They're going to want to stop and listen. Maybe they might be a little bit frustrated, but your purpose is true. And here's how I'm going to help you with that. When you need to interrupt somebody, there's a difference between me just starting to share my thought. Let's say, for example, you're talking to me, telling me a story. I've heard this story a million times. There's a difference between me cutting in and going, yeah. I mean, we all know, okay? And then just ignoring you and continue to go on with my thought. That's going to upset you, right? That's going to make you feel like, oh, they just interrupted me. They just cut me off. But if I were to use your name and say, Jefferson, I need to interrupt you. All of a sudden, it doesn't feel like an interruption because I told you what it is. I told you that I'm interrupting you. And I know we've discussed this before on the podcast on how to handle interruptions, but it's the same true for people who dominate conversations. If I tell you that I'm interrupting you, if I say, I know I'm interrupting, or I need to interrupt you, nobody takes offense to it because here you're acknowledging what you're doing. It's the acknowledgement of the formality. Say, yes, I understand. Typically, I should not be interrupting. I should be hearing you out. And in this case, you have to because they're not respecting the formality of I say something, then you say something. I say something, you say something. It's just all about them. So if you think about it in a pie chart, there's these people who control the conversation to hear their own voice a lot of ways, and they're totally fine with taking up 98% of the pie and leaving 2% to you, really for that 2% to tell them how great they are, how smart they are. We're not going to be doing that. Here, it's as simple as using their name because it's going to get their attention. They're going to perk up to that. To when you say, hey, Jefferson, it's going to automatically turn to you. They're going to look at you, especially the more you raise your voice in that way. But you're going to do it kind. You're not going to do it in a way that is rough or rude or just exasperated. That's going to make it go further south. Here, you are pulling them back in a way, nudging them back in to how a conversation is supposed to go, especially one that you're going to be involved in. Because understand, what you're doing here is also informing them, hey, if you want to have a conversation with me, this is how this is going to go. I'm going to say something, you're going to say something, and we're going to acknowledge each other's points. I'm not here. I didn't buy a ticket to listen to the show where I just sit and you get to say everything and I have to be quiet. That's not it. Here, you are showing them your manual. If you want to communicate with me, this is how you're going to do it. So when you use their name, it gets their attention. And it's easy way, if you feel like you're being too direct, to tell them, I need to interrupt you. This is a big key point of this, mind you. Do not apologize. Look at me. Listen to me. Don't apologize. Don't say, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. You are not sorry for it. You are not sorry for it. Here, you need to do it. It is them that has put you in this position. So you're not going to apologize for having a boundary. You're not going to apologize for needing to take a stance and say, this can't continue. Cool? So you're not going to say, I'm sorry. It is, I need to interrupt you. That is as simple as that. Or, I'm interrupting you. I know I'm interrupting you. Both of those will even allow them to go, okay, I'm listening. It'll totally turn into you, and they're not going to take offense to it because you're acknowledging it in the moment. And one point I want to make very clear is that once you interrupt them and